So what have we got today? Well, we've got something that's going to go on and on and on and on and on. Now, hey, some people would say that's a bit like me. I go on and on and on. But there's method behind my madness, just trust me on that. What have we got today? Well, it's something that came along within the last, I don't know, 6 months or so. It's not the newest product, but it's not far off. And that's what matters. But in this review, you're going to see a device that is legendary. Yeah, it's totally legendary. And what's important about it is this one's got the touch of the EVHs. So let's get it out of the box. It's one of them EVH SDE-3000s. Yeah, I'll call it an EVH SDE-3000 because there is another one that isn't an EVH version. And it is slightly different. So, yeah, that's what I've got with this one. Now, this has just literally arrived in that box. I've pulled it out, and this is how it comes from my friends at PMT. They call themselves Play Music Today, which is a new one on me. I just seen PMT forever. It reminds me of the bus company I used to work for when I left school. PMT. That's another story. And just before we do go on, I actually did pay for this one. How much did I pay? Well, this is part of the reason why I bought it from PMT in the first place. And remember, I bought it, this is an unsponsored video. But I actually paid, how much did I pay? £399, which is a fair bit cheaper than what it would be from all the other ones I could find. So there it is, and I had to pay shipping on it, sadly. £7.99 shipping, but I saved an awful lot more money than the $7.99 I ended up paying. So, yeah, good for PMT so far. I haven't opened the box. But, yeah, bad for the others because they got the business. Okay, well, what's in the box? That's a great question. Well, you've got this first thing here, some instructions and 3 cables which we'll talk about later on. We've got, yeah, this thing down the side, which for all intents and purposes looks like a power supply to me. Yeah, we'll come back to that also later. And here's the unit, wrapped up as it should be, directly from the maker as brand new. Which from some companies I could tell you that doesn't come brand new. Sometimes it's been messed with, but this one looks great. Well, there it is, all good so far. Yeah, I have to say, it does look, it looks the business, this does. Yeah, and the SDE-3000, it's like a legendary device. It goes back to the early 80s, give or take. My memory's going a little bit, but I do distinctly remember them, but I couldn't really afford them at the time. Yeah, they were quite expensive. Well, the SDE-3000 was all about digital delay, and it was an analog device, 19-inch rack. And yeah, it'd fit very nicely in your rack, I have to say, but it'd also nicely empty your bank account. So I never had one, sadly. The people that knew about them, though, oh yeah, they were right on the ball, on the cutting edge of the time. And that definitely was the cutting edge at the time. And yeah, the likes of EVH, well, you know what he was like. He was a sort of revolutionary back in the day. Well, he was a revolutionary right till the end, I guess. But back in the day, yeah, he took 2 of these SDE-3000s and threw them in a rack, as you would. But then he started doing other stuff with them, and he was achieving a lot of things that you couldn't do without the SDE-3000. That's the simplest answer. And in any case, basically, if you had an SDE-3000, you kept it, and they fetch a fair bit of money today. I'll put down in the text maybe a link or two to something, or I'll just mention on screen now the sort of money they fetch in here in 2024. Yeah, but don't worry about all that because, well, you've got one of these. And I have to say right off, in the first place, so to speak, that it doesn't have to be the EVH one. So what's different? Well, you'll find on the other version, the non-EVH version, that it doesn't do everything that this one does. And of course, this one's loaded up with EVH mixes out of his racks, so some people say. But I'm a little bit sceptical about some of it. Yeah, I'm like that, you know, normal. Anyway, what we're going to do, first thing we're going to do, is we're going to pull this apart and have a look inside, because it's always essential, in my opinion, to know what you're actually buying as opposed to what you think you're buying. Roland are usually pretty good, but, well, they might not be. So we'll take a look inside, and then we'll have a look around the periphery of it, and then take a look at the top, and so on and so forth, and move along from there. By the way, there will be audio in this video towards the end somewhere, if you're one of them types of people that can't look at anything except watching somebody play. Well, it's got its place, but it won't be in my videos all the way through. Okay, well, here's the first look inside the SDE-3000 EVH, the dual digital delay, that you will have ever seen. And yeah, it's quite important that you do actually understand what you're buying. With this product, as I said, there are two models, one slightly different than the other one. I think the output connectors across the back vary, but we'll look at that in a little while when we get to the outputs. And you can see here, it's typical, absolutely typical Roland quality, or Roland Boss quality, I'll call it that. Yeah, it's as good as you can get, really. Having said that, it's all made on a machine. There's nothing particularly anything special about what I can see there compared to anything else that's made on a machine, I guess. They're all pretty much similar. If you look at this one, it doesn't really give you much of an inkling where it's made, but we'll have a dig around about that a little bit later. There's not much to see there, so I'm going to go a little bit further and let you look at the next little bit. Yeah, before I do go, there is this board across here which handles the front foot switches. That's what that does. This other thing here will probably go up to the controls on the top board. This is the bottom board. And that's how you'll control the unit. But my guess is most of the stuff's underneath this board here. So that's exactly what we're going to go and do now. Take a look at what's under that. Okay, well, here we are. This is probably the first time you've seen all of the boards that are involved. I don't know, but there they are. You've got this bottom board that looks after the display and some of them buttons. You've got this other one across here that looks after the three main foot switches. More about them a bit later. And then you've got this main board, which is really the bottom board, with all these controls, all this I/O on it, and all the rest of it on this side. Now, there's not really that much to look at here, except for these I/O, and really a quick look at some of the chips and one or two other little bits and pieces that nobody's ever bothered to tell you, and it's unlikely they ever will. Okay, well, that's the board with the three switches on that face forward when the unit's turned over. And you can see that those three switches are pretty much proprietary switches from what I've ever seen. They might not be, but I think they are. And it's like everything else. No problem until you get a problem. And then it's a problem. It'll be a problem you might or might not be able to fix if you can't get the switch. Or you might have to botch in some other type of switch if they can't supply one. It's unlikely they'll ever supply you and me one, but that's how life is. Yeah, so that's that board there. At least it is on a separate board, and that's a positive. Yeah, definitely a positive. When you're looking further back here and looking at these with all these connectors across, you can imagine what that could be like, or this little one here, if you get any major problems with those connectors. Well, there you go. That's about as near as I want to really get. So let's just have a quick discussion about what we're looking at. Yeah. So you can see here's the PCB, which first off, most importantly, is made in Malaysia. You can see that down in the corner. But it doesn't seem to say that, well, it might on the outside. I haven't got there yet. But it certainly confirms that the board's made in Malaysia, and it's highly likely if the boards are made in Malaysia, everything else is too, yeah, other than buying the components themselves, which could be Malaysian or not, as the case may be. Anyway, let's move on. You look at all these little silver things all over the board. Well, those are capacitors of one type or another. And yeah, we've got one electrolytic capacitor right there that the pointer's on at the moment. And sooner or later, over time, that will actually fail. And they last a long time, I agree, but you know, there it is. When yours goes funny, change that. These other ones tend to last a very long time. So I'm told. What do I know? We've got a main processor here that says Roland on it, from what I can see. And, well, if it says Roland on it, it's probably Roland proprietary, and I might not be able to find out much about that. But you've got these other little chips here. There's one there, one there, one there, three there, one there, one there. There's a few of them scattered around the board. Another couple there, look. All for good measure. And that's all well and good. I can't really, like I say, probably tell you that much about them. But that's not the point. The point is you're looking at the quality overall. Now let's have a look at these at the top here. You can see that although they are plastic, they're all plastic, they've got metal tips on them, or metal ends, that screw into the case. And that's a good thing, because when they screw into the case, it holds all these very solid indeed. Unlike the plastic ones that you'll see kicking around from different suppliers. There's some right rubbish out there if you dig deep enough. But these ones, I have to say, are probably as good as you're going to be able to find. And do note that on the top here, you can see that this one's got a little metal spacer. Those two have got plastic spacers, and these other 5 have got metal spacers too. I'd also point you towards these 2 little switches up here. I don't know how robust they'll be over time. They may or may not be, but do bear in mind that that's what they look like. That's how they sit on the board, and woe betide anybody who gets any problems with them, I guess. Who knows? We'll find out in 10 years or 10 months or 10 days. Okay, moving along a bit further, you've got these little connections here. Now these 2 down here are MIDI in and out. And I have to say, I'm not a fan of these type of little MIDI connectors. You can see on the back of the board here how they fasten on. Maybe you can, or might be a picture on the screen. But they don't look that robust to me. And if they're MIDI ins and outs and you're using them all the time, they're going to get some stick, really. So watch out for them, won't you? They're plastic. And down at the side of that is a USB connector, which looks pretty normal to me. It's pretty standard. You've got a ground point or screw point there. Up the top here, you've got the mains in. Or should I say mains in? I should say power in, because it's not the mains, it's 9 volts. More of that later. But it is held in place with a bracket that screws onto the case, which is another good thing. So overall, great points for this, but it would be. There's only one thing that mars it a little bit, and that's this down here. Can you see this? There's like a white snake snaking across the PCB. And what that is, you can see it there. What that is that's either a fix for a PCB that didn't turn out quite right, or they missed the track, or. But in any case, that's what it does. It takes this connection here, and across to there. What makes the board work again? So it's a manufacturer's, I won't say repair, it's a manufacturer's fix for some problem, probably in manufacturing. Yeah. You don't see them very often, do you? In fact, the last time I saw one of those was actually on a diesel Hagen, going back a few years, in fact. So bear that in mind, won't you? Yeah. Other than that, there's not really that much on this board, is there? So I'm going to box this back up now. You've seen enough. You've seen what nobody else would bother showing you. And let's get on and have a look at the unit on the external part. Well, okay, here's what it's like when you plug her in. Okay, well this can't be a hyper in-depth review showing you every button and every configuration that you could ever have. That's not what it's really about. I want to show you the basics of the unit, and then we'll look at the I/O around the back, which is equally as interesting as the front, or as boring as the front, depends on your point of view and whether you love software or you might not love software because, well, you might be looking for a while for some on this one, but that's another story. Anyway, let's look at the front. None of it's rocket science, is it? I mean, let's face it. It's a pedal from the 80s that's, well, it's simulating the thing being, well, developed in the 80s. You can see these control knobs. They're very much like the original SDE-3000, and that they did say was intentional. Well, they're like that, aren't they? Well, let's have a look at these switches just quickly and see what we're talking about. Let's have a look in this area first because, well, actually, most of them are self-explanatory. I mean, you can see it, can't you? Time up and down for the delay time. Then you've got feedback. Adjust the delay feedback level. You know what that is. Setting of 0 produces a single delay. Beep. Yeah, just like that. The out button basically adjusts the output level for the delay sound. Well, it would. And the rate, which you can see, is the next one. That adjusts the cycle of the delay modulation. And lastly, we've got the depth. Depth button adjusts the depth of the delay modulation. A setting of 0 turns the modulation off. Well, how hard does it have to be? Well, clearly it doesn't. So let's move along a bit further to these 4 buttons at the top. You can see them there. 1 to 4, in fact. These are the different memories. There's 4 memories there. Well, actually, there's more than 4 memories because there's 2 banks. We've got a bank A and a bank B. Can't say more than that, can you? That's how simple it is. And basically, you've then got this EVH button, which I guess a lot of people would be interested in. Wow, what's the EVH button do, man? Well, you press the Eddie Van Halen button, we'll call it that, to recall this well-known setting. That's what it says. Detailed settings aren't shown. Also, you can't edit or save the settings. You can only operate the out button. Yeah, so you've got what you're given, and thanks very much. That makes sense, I guess. Well, it did to Eddie. Well, next we've got this section down here. You can see this sort of extra button mode, I'll call it that. We've got a filter button. You can look at that. That's a delay filter. If it's on, you get a natural sounding effect, obtained when you're using the delay as an echo. So there. Second thing down is this time button. That effectively, basically, doubles the length of time of the delay. If it's off, it's 0 to 1500 milliseconds. And if it's on, it's 0 to 3000 milliseconds, or 0 to 3 seconds, if you will. Yeah, you've got a digital delay 2 and a delay phase. Well, on the phase, that inverts the phase of the delay sound. More of that a bit later, maybe. And the digital delay 2, there, 1 and 2 that is. The digital delay 1 button and 2 buttons switch between digital delay 1 and digital delay 2. Well, yeah, they would. Then we've got a mod button. Mod button turns the modulation on and off because it's got modulation built into it. And you've also got this feedback phase button here, if you can see that. That inverts the phase of the delay sound feedback. You've also got the setup button over here. Now that configures the system parameters. If you press this for a long time, it'll basically lock all the buttons so they can't be knocked. The other button operations are disabled when this feature is enabled, so you just hold it down. It says there, if you can read that, I'm sure you can. Now on these down the bottom here, this is a pretty boring pedal for most parts. We turn the digital delay 1 on or off, or digital delay 2 on or off, and you can have them both on if you want, that sort of stuff. There's also a control pedal here. You can see if you hold that down, or maybe switch it, depends how it's configured. then it will bring in the control function. And there's also a tap button. If you're doing this all the time with it, you could get the exact tempo that you want. Now, I'm not going to spend any more time up here looking at all this stuff. It's a little bit pointless. Yeah, it's really a sort of analog, sort of controlled. I'll call it analog controlled, but there might not even be any analog in it, contrary to what they say. Yeah, but the controls remind me of an old analog type of pedal, which is what the SDE-3000 was. Let's get this a little bit out of the way before we go any further. Yeah, around the side here you've got a MIDI in and out. You can see them there. Awful types of connections, in my opinion. They are what they are. Those are what Roland have given you, or is it Boss? Now, it says Roland Corporation on it. Those are what they've given you of some of the last units, including the GT1000 Core and those type of products. I'm getting sick of seeing these. And you've got the typical USB connector, which, yeah, it's a Type C. At least they've brought that up to date, haven't they? If nothing else. We've got Roland Corporation address. We've got made in Malaysia, so they did say it on the outside. There's a patent on it. So what? UKCA, not yet implemented. We've got CE, FCC, ROSH compliance and WEEE. So it meets all the requirements, and I'm quite sure that it does, because that's what Roland's good at. Now then, round the back of the unit. This is where things start to get a little bit more exciting. Well, I think so, don't you? Well, you might not at the moment, but you will later on if you've never seen one of these pedals before. Or you've never bothered to look too close, or you know the sort of things. I mean, there's so much gear out there. You couldn't possibly have it all. Who could? Well, let's have a look across the back, see what we've got here. We start off with this one here, input. It says input mono or left mono, or return input right. So yeah, external loop, return, send. So there's an out and there's a return, and that is a loop. Yeah, so you could put whatever you want in there, maybe a Roland pedal or something, who knows, could be anybody's pedal. But on this input, there it is, it's a mono input currently, and yeah, suited for guitar, but could be anything almost, I guess. For this external loop that I've already mentioned, we've got a ground lift as well, and somewhere we can connect to ground to if we need to, because you can get into hums and clicks and pops and all that sort of stuff with a device like this, when it can do some of the things that it can do, which are not immediately obvious until you go a little bit further. But one thing to note is this here, you've got this return impedance, high Z or low Z. Notice that it is the return impedance, which is handling that one there. Yeah, all switchable, as that one is. Now, before we do go too much further, do note that that says input R and left for mono. So you could put a stereo in there. So you could feed it with stereo if you really wanted to. But this is the place, on this section here, where things start getting a little bit interesting. Well, they get very interesting if you want the truth. What you've got is you've got a direct and an effects left and effects right. So this direct here that you can see there basically is like literally your guitar out. This one here on the for the right, well, it says right. This one here is EFXL, so that's effects left and that's effects right. And what you can do is you can send these to different amplifiers. We can have a left amp and a right amp and a center amp. And on this unit, it's what they call wet, dry, wet, which is what they claim Eddie Van Halen did all the time. Well, he might have. Yeah, he might well have, or might not have. I guess Eddie would have been the sort of guy that would be experimenting. absolutely continuously. But in any case, if he did use wet, dry, wet, well, there it is, you can get it. And by the way, I don't believe you can quite get that on the other pedal, but more of that a bit later. Moving along, we've got room for an expression pedal or a control pedal, 2 and 3. 2 or 3, I guess. And this one here is, again, it's a control 4 and 5, expression 2 pedal, and a GAFC. And as you might know, the GAFC is actually, it's like a 6-button pedal that Roland Boss make. And yeah, I use one on, I think I'm using it on one of the Boss devices, the reactive load things, you know, that type of product. TAE, yeah. In any case, it's available and you can buy it and plug it in there, which would expand your control rather much further, wouldn't it? And at the end here, scarily, once again, we've got a power connector with no on and off. And these people are on about saving the planet and being green. Well, they're not, are they? They're not being green and they're not saving anything. They haven't even got an on or off switch. I think that's a bit sad. Come on, Roland, wakey wakey. Okay, well, hope all that's so good so far. Seems pretty good to me. Well, I did look around the back of this unit and I was talking about the standard pedal as opposed to the EVH version. Yeah, I did go down that route a little bit. And I've got an image on screen here. It might be on your screen as well. But you'll notice that on the input side, you've got a left mono and a right, whereas this one's got far more. On the output side of the SDE-3000D, the standard dual digital delay, you've got a left mono and a right, so you've got a stereo out. You've got a stereo in as well if you want to look at it that way. You've also got the control 2 and 3 and expression that we had on this one. And the same control 4 and 5 expression 2 and that GAFC hole where you can stuff the pedal. Yeah, you've got one of them too, which is all very interesting, but to be honest, you haven't got anything else. So it's far more limited around the back than what this EVH one is. And that's one of the reasons why I bought the EVH version as opposed to the standard version. There's nothing wrong with the standard version, but, well, it's like everything else. Depends what you're trying to do, but this will give you the ability on the EVH version to do this wet, dry, wet thing. Yeah, and that's something. I used to have a stereo setup, a Mesa Boogie Triaxis, and a 290 amp, and all that was brilliant, absolutely brilliant back in the day. But for me, the reasons I actually bought this, because some people might want to know, as opposed to the one on the screen there, is that it gives you the ability to go and experiment a lot. And, you know, you've got that thing sitting in the background. Well, if it's good enough for Eddie, it's good enough for me. Well, it's probably better than good enough for me. A minion like me. Oh, you're a minion too. They didn't give you a free one, did they? No, of course not. Me neither. Now, while we're proceeding down this review, don't forget, you're one of them, aren't you? You haven't subscribed, have you? You just come on here to take a look. What I need you to do is press that subscribe. Yeah. Do the thumbs up thing. And then go and hit that bell. As if you were a monk or something. I don't know. Yeah, and then you'll get notifications about, you know, if I make a new review. And if you like to subscribe, it's probably a good idea to do all of them things. Do remember, it costs me time, effort and money to create these. And I don't really do it for the money. I do it to try and help people. Yeah, the guys that aren't like the nasty ones that you see on the internet. You've seen them. Let's get on. So having these EVH features, to me, is, well, it's a bonus. And for the difference in price, I can tell you when I bought this one, I paid £399. I don't know what they are in America, but the rumour was 600 list or something crazy. Yeah, £399. And the other one that's on that screen there, the SDE-3000D, they wanted £349. Well, listen, for the £50 difference, I'm telling you now, this is probably a far better option. Well, there are a few things we could look at. Let's take a look at the power supply, because power supplies can be really nasty things, but it's a Roland device. Maybe it's a good one. Let's take a look. And what do you know? It's one of the Roland good ones. I'll put a picture somewhere. Yeah. It's a Roland PSB 1U. And I've got these all over the studio. They are actually quite good, but they're 20 odd pounds a piece if you ever buy one, you know, separate from something else. So they've included a really good power supply, in my opinion. So no criticisms of that whatsoever. I'm really pleased that they've put a good power supply in. And there was a few other things in the box that I never talked about. One of them was 4 feet for underneath. No, not 4 feet deep, 4 feet. That's a bit like 4 candles, isn't it? It's another story. You got these things here. What the hell's this? There they are. There's 3 of them. And I'll tell you what I guess about these, no matter what anybody says, including Roland. They wouldn't be in here if you didn't need them. Yeah, what they are is to reduce the earth hum. Or the hum. I think it's earth hum on these, without going at the manual and looking at all the rest. But that's what I think they do. They help cut the noise back. I wonder if I can use one on my missus. And in the little flimsy paperwork and packaging you do get one of these little cards. Don't get excited. It's good for cleaning your window off on your car. But what you can do with it, it's got one of them scanning things on, you know. And you can go to boss.info/start if you don't want to do any scanning of them. Yeah, and that'll take you to where the manual is. Yeah, it's got a manual. There's also on the flimsy piece of paper that purportedly tells you everything about the unit. There's a reference manual you can download. Yeah, I'm looking at it down here, Roland, on the Roland website. Be linked in the text below. And there's also Boss Tone Central. Oh, why is there Boss Tone Central? Because it says here, you can download memories for this unit from our dedicated Boss Tone Central website. So there, you can download some memories if you want to play around a bit. Now, I guess most people will. But equally, I could guess that most people will make their own when they get sick and tired of Eddie. Well, can you get sick and tired of Eddie? I don't think so. He was a genius in his day, no doubt about that. Well, he's been a genius all the way through, I think. Yeah. Not like me, I'm just a minion, like most people. Well, some like to think they're not. Ah, there you are. I did do a little bit of research into this, and I watched a couple of videos. Yeah, they're on YouTube. One's from the Roland guy, that Japanese, I think he's Japanese. Well, there he is explaining about the SDE-3000 and how it's analog and all the rest of it. But we've had a look inside this one. I don't see really that much analog stuff myself, but they do claim that it's analog and digital together. So they say, and there's enough room in there to fit 2 SDE-3000s that were this big. Now 2 of them are that big. So I thought it was a bit crazy. There's a few crazy things in that video, and I was quite surprised really to see somebody like Pete Thorne actually making a video and claiming that he's somehow developed the unit. Well, he might have. But if he developed it, don't we call it a SDE-3000 somebody else? I think we would, wouldn't we? Well, you know, Pete Thorne is what he is. I played one of his amps at one time and quickly sold it because it wasn't for me. And yeah, I don't know. I just don't get it. I'd really like to think that Eddie Van Halen's had his say in this. Yeah, I'd really like to think Eddie was the man that signed it off. the man that did everything. After all, they're his settings, weren't they? That's what it says in the video. Well, if they're Eddie's settings, I think a lot of the people involved, other than Eddie, are just people that said, yeah, oh, tell us what it's like and we'll make it and then you can come and have a go. Did Eddie ever have a go of this product while he was alive? I don't know. Do you? I couldn't say that I could believe most people that would say or could say, oh yeah, Eddie did everything. It's for you to determine. It is what it is. Eddie Van Halen, in my opinion, was one of the key people in the guitar world ever since I left school. And it goes in some sort of order, but not exactly. Jimi Hendrix, Carlos Santana in 1970 and 71. Malmsteen, Gary Moore, Eddie Van Halen, Joe Satriani, Steve Vai. You get the gist of it. Those sort of people are iconic people. Yeah, and I've got a lot of time for all of that. But I've got less time for people who might tell me that, oh yeah, that was me, I did that, you know. I know it says this on it, but it was me. Personally, I don't have the time for that. Yeah, I like to have the gear that's been worked on really by Eddie. And that EVH 5153 Stealth sitting down there on the floor, and tell you what, he probably did work on that one. Oh, this one? No, he might have. He might not have. The video was a bit vague in what it said. So don't take it that, you know, Eddie's home list for you to be perfect for you and it was all Eddie's idea and all the rest, because somehow I don't think it was. R.I.P. Eddie. Great guy. Okay, let's talk about the chips just for a few seconds. I can't really tell you that much about them because, well, they sort of roll in proprietary stuff. And that first chip you can see on the screen now, down there, well, I've got it on camera here. Yeah, what can I say about it? I can say it's a Roland chip and it's proprietary and that's that. Oh, yours is blown up. Well, look for the trash can, man. That's what I'd say about that one. Yeah, fair enough. It is what it is, and I can't get any further with that one, I'm afraid. Okay, well, the next chip up you can see, well, there's two or three of them, but I'm only going to talk about one of the chips. That's an MX25L3233F. Yeah, it's a serial multi-IO flash memory chip. CMOS, of course, made by Micronics International. I have it down here. And I'm not really going to spend too long on this because it's like everything else. Yeah, it can go on forevermore. It is what it is. I'm not going to spend time on it, it's hardly worth the effort. It's a bit of flash RAM. Well, we're looking at chips though. There's this one here. It's an AKM 4619 VN chip. And that's basically, it's, what is it? Let's have a look. Well, this is a codec 24-bit 4AD 4DA. So it's an A to D and D to A chip. It's 192 kilohertz TDM. That's what it says. What's the price of them? Well, but I'm not here for any of that. That's what it is, and that's the sort of codec device that you've got in this unit. Yeah, and then we had another device. Yeah, so let's move on to the next one. You've also got inside this thing, this BD9865 MWV. You'll see it on the screen down there. Yeah, it's a power management IC for the DSC and DVC. Yeah, so there. That's what it says it is. Step-down converter, 2-channel. Contains cross converter, step-up converter. Built-in OCP, overcurrent protection and that sort of thing. But it's pretty boring really. Let's move on. We've got a tiny little device called a 2090 FS chip. Well, what's it do? Well, who knows, but there's a number of them here. The 12-bit serial input, parallel output drivers. Yeah, data input is shifted to the 12-bit internal shift register and blah, blah, blah. Pretty boring that. Got another chip. pretty boring, these chips, if you want the truth. It's that main custom processing device that probably does most stuff. But this is a MC74VH CT32A or something similar, quad 2 input OR gate CMOS logic level shifter with RS-TTL compatible inputs. Don't really matter, but it's in there. Now, scarily enough, that really ends the sort of section on the chips. There's not really much to look at other than that main processor, of which they don't really sort of share that sort of information out. It's probably there somewhere, but minions like me and owners like you, yeah, you're not going to get to know about that. Not to worry, I'm sure it'll work. We'll see how it comes out in the sounds. Anyway, that's it for the chip section. So where does it actually leave us with this pedal? Well, it leaves us in a pretty good place, if you want the truth, irrespective of my personal point of view. I wouldn't buy the other one, the one on this screen down here. You can't see it, but it might be up here somewhere. Yeah, that looks a bit limited to me, and for the £50 difference, well, nah, I don't think you would. I don't think you would do that. You could argue that, well, I don't want EVH tones, but you can settle your own tones anyway. You can do all that on this one. But you've got these extra I/O, and it's these extra I/O that add such a value to the product, in my opinion. It's only my opinion, but I've got one and maybe you haven't. Yeah, that says a lot, actually. So the more basic unit for that £50 difference, it could even be $60 or $70 difference. Would you really go down the route of buying the device that's so limited compared to this one? I don't think so. So summing up, well, the quality is nigh on perfect. It always is with Roland, and I love the power supply that they put in, which was actually a good power supply, which makes a change for some. I like this idea of these cables, although I might not like it so much if I've got to use them. That's another thought, isn't it? I don't like the tiny little MIDI ports that don't really do much for anybody, I don't think. You could argue that, oh, it's going to be used on the floor with the rest of the pedals, but what if you're not going to do that? What if you're like me? I'm never going to do that, ever. And in the studio, it'll be used in a different way. So, it's as long as it's short, but don't like them at all. I do like the USB-C, by the way, that's been brought along to current technology, which makes a bit of a difference, I know. I also like the design, don't you? It's solid metal and all that stuff. Well, how's it sound? That's an important aspect. Well, it sounds good. Yeah, it sounds very good depending on how you set it up and all that sort of stuff. So you're going to get to hear it anytime soon. So that sums it up as simply as I can in a nice, easy way. And I don't want the video to be 2 hours long or something. Yeah, so what I would say is a score, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. Well, why not a 10? I just have that niggling doubt in the back of my mind whether Eddie Van Halen actually did make this unit, or whether it's just a commercial product. Might not matter to you. It might matter to you. I don't know. So overall, very decent device. PMT did a great job of supplying it in a very fast way and at a price that was commensurate with what it's really worth, £399. If you're paying any more than that, well, maybe you're in the wrong place. Go and have a look at PMT or your local music retailer. Here's the plane, and until next time, get out of here. Okay, well, here we are. I've just backed the gain down on this to about number 12 on the meter, and this is what you get. Okay, like I said, I'm not going to be spending hours on end just playing these sort of tones because everybody on the internet's done all that. I just wanted to show you what it'd be like for somebody like me using this thing, and well, what I played earlier was how I'd use it really, but I wouldn't be using it all the time because it's far too much for what I need. The wet dry wet works really quite well, no doubt about that, but it's like everything else, it's down to what you want. At the end of the day, it's not really my scene, but I did review it. It's well enough made, but I wonder where Eddie is. R.I.P. Eddie. Till next time, get out of here.